It began with a seemingly innocuous letter tucked neatly into my mailbox amongst the bills and junk mail. Notice of lawn care violation, it proclaimed in bold, official-looking font. I frowned, my gaze drifting to my perfectly acceptable lawn. It was green, it was mowed, it was a lawn. What could possibly be wrong with it? I unfolded the letter, my confusion growing with each line. Apparently, my grass blades were an egregious 3.2 inches long, a blatant violation of the HOA's strictly enforced 2.5-inch regulation. A fine of $25 was enclosed, a stark reminder of the HOA's power and my apparent lawn care negligence. 2.5 inches? I muttered to myself, shaking my head. Who measures grass with a ruler? But the HOA, it seemed, did. And they weren't afraid to wield their measuring tape with an iron fist. The violations escalated. A fine for a patch of discoloration, caused by a rogue sprinkler head, I later discovered. Another fine for non-uniform greenness. Apparently, a few blades of a slightly lighter shade had infiltrated my otherwise perfectly acceptable lawn. And then, the most ridiculous fine of all, a $50 penalty for seasonal decorations that clash with the neighborhood aesthetic. The offending decoration, a small, tasteful pumpkin I had placed on my porch for Halloween. "A pumpkin?" I exclaimed to my neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, who was tending to her prize-winning roses, which, I suspected, were also in violation of some obscure HOA regulation. "They fine me for a pumpkin?" Mrs. Higgins chuckled, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Don't you know, Ben? Pumpkins are disruptive. They clash with what was it? Ah, yes, the harmonious flow of the suburban landscape." I rolled my eyes. "Harmonious flow? It's a pumpkin, Mrs. Higgins, not a flock of flamingos." But the HOA, under the leadership of the newly elected president, Karen McDictator, yes, that Karen, was on a mission to enforce their vision of suburban perfection, no matter how absurd. They were obsessed with control, with uniformity, with turning our neighborhood into a Stepford suburb where every lawn was identical, every house was painted beige, and every resident was a mindless drone conforming to their ridiculous rules. The third fine, however, was the final straw. It arrived on a crisp autumn morning, a bright orange envelope mocking me with its cheerful hue and its grim message. "Notice of lawn care violation," it proclaimed. "The offense? One fallen leaf observed on the property. Immediate removal required." I stared at the notice, my blood pressure rising faster than the morning sun. A single leaf? They were fining me for a single leaf? This was beyond ridiculous. It was an act of war. "That's it," I muttered to myself, crumpling the notice in my fist. "They've pushed me too far. If they want a perfect lawn, I'll give them a perfect lawn. But it won't be the lawn they're expecting." A mischievous grin spread across my face. It was time for Operation Snowpocalypse. The fallen leaf incident was my Rubicon. There was no going back. The HOA, with their petty tyranny and their obsession with lawn perfection, had awakened a rebellious spirit within me I didn't know I possessed. My initial frustration morphed into a steely resolve. If they wanted a perfect lawn, I'd give them a perfect lawn. But it wouldn't be the manicured 2.5-inch, uniformly green lawn of their HOA-approved dreams. It would be something different. The idea, as brilliant as it was absurd, struck me in the middle of the night. I sat bolt upright in bed, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. "A snow machine," I whispered to myself, the words echoing in the darkness. A giant, ridiculous snow-making machine. It was perfect. It was petty. It was the ultimate act of defiance against the HOA's lawn-obsessed tyranny. They wanted a perfect lawn year-round? Fine. I'd give them a winter wonderland, even in the middle of July. Let's see how their precious 2.5-inch rule holds up against a foot of artificial snow. The next morning, fueled by coffee and a potent cocktail of righteous indignation and petty glee, I set about making my vision a reality. I dove into the depths of the internet, researching snow machines with the fervor of a child searching for the perfect Christmas present. I wasn't interested in those flimsy, backyard snowmaking contraptions you find at your local hardware store. No, I wanted the big guns. The kind of snow machine they use at ski resorts. The kind that could blanket my entire yard in a thick layer of fluffy, artificial snow. I found it. A behemoth of a machine. A gleaming monstrosity of metal and pipes, capable of producing enough snow to bury a small village. It was absurdly oversized for my suburban lawn, a fact that only added to its appeal. I imagined the HOA's faces when they saw this thing parked in my driveway, a snow-spewing testament to my defiance. The purchase was a whirlwind of credit card swipes and hurried phone calls. I arranged for delivery, my excitement growing with each passing hour. This wasn't just a snow machine. It was a symbol of my rebellion, a weapon in my war against the HOA's petty tyranny, and I couldn't wait to unleash it. The arrival of the snow machine was a spectacle in itself. It was delivered on a flatbed truck, its massive form dwarfing my modest suburban home. The driver, a burly man with a handlebar mustache and a twinkle in his eye, whistled as he surveyed the scene. "You sure you got the right address, buddy?" he asked, a grin spreading across his face. "This thing's usually headed for the mountains, not the burbs." "It's the right address," I assured him, returning the grin. "And trust me, it's going to be put to good use." The installation was a community effort. My neighbors, tired of the HOA's tyranny and eager for a bit of entertainment, rallied to the cause. We spent the afternoon maneuvering the behemoth into my backyard, its pipes and nozzles snaking across the lawn like a metallic serpent. We disguised it with tarps and strategically placed bushes, a covert operation designed to keep the HOA's watchful eyes at bay. It was a scene straight out of a spy movie, except instead of nuclear warheads, we were hiding a snow machine. "Think they'll notice?" Mrs. Higgins asked, adjusting a potted fern to obscure a particularly conspicuous nozzle. "They'll notice," I replied, a mischievous glint in my eye. "But not until it's too late. The first snowfall was glorious. I woke up early, eager to witness the HOA's reaction. I flipped the switch, and the machine roared to life, spewing a torrent of fluffy, white snow across my lawn. Within minutes, my yard was transformed into a winter wonderland, a stark contrast to the perfectly manicured HOA-approved lawns surrounding it. Karen, naturally, was the first to notice. Her shriek of outrage echoed through the neighborhood, a symphony of disbelief and fury. I watched from my window as she stormed across the street, her face contorted in a mask of pure indignation. "What have you done?" she screeched, her voice barely audible above the whirring of the snow machine. "This is outrageous! This is an abomination!" "An abomination, Karen?" I asked, feigning confusion. "But you wanted a perfect lawn, didn't you? Uniformly white, no exceptions. I'm simply complying with the HOA's high standards." Karen sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of purple. "This isn't what we meant. This is artificial." "Artificial?" I chuckled. "But Karen, snow is just frozen water. It's perfectly natural. And besides," I added, gesturing towards a sign I had strategically placed near the snow machine, "it's just seasonal decor." "'Tis the season to be jolly, after all." Karen's eye twitched. She opened her mouth to retort, but I continued, my voice dripping with mock sincerity. "And to ensure the HOA board members feel extra festive," I said, pressing a button on a remote control, "I've added a few special touches." Suddenly, the air filled with the sound of synchronized Christmas music, a chorus of jingle bells and "Deck the Halls" echoing through the neighborhood. Candy cane lights strategically placed around the snow-covered lawn blinked in sync with the music, creating a dazzling, albeit slightly terrifying, spectacle. Karen's face was now a symphony of emotions: anger, confusion, disbelief, and a hint of fear. She stared at the snow, the lights, and the sign proclaiming "Lawn maintained at perfect consistency year-round," with a mixture of horror and grudging admiration. She had been out-pettied, out-maneuvered, and out-Christmased, and the snow, that beautiful, fluffy, artificial snow, was just the beginning. The HOA's response to my winter wonderland was a predictable blend of outrage and bureaucratic flailing. They convened an emergency meeting, their faces grim, their rulebooks clutched like shields against the encroaching snow. I could practically hear Karen's voice echoing through the walls of their pristine headquarters, demanding my immediate compliance with something.
"There must be a rule against this," she shrieked, her voice laced with desperation. "Artificial snow, it's unnatural, it's disruptive, it's a violation of the spirit of the community."
The HOA board members, a collection of equally flustered and rule-obsessed individuals, scrambled to find a loophole, a bylaw, anything that could justify their outrage. But their frantic search was in vain. The HOA rulebook, that Bible of suburban regulation, was surprisingly silent on the matter of artificial snow.
"There's nothing in here about precipitation,"
Mr. Henderson, the perpetually flustered HOA president, stammered, his finger tracing the lines of the rulebook with a trembling hand.
But the aesthetic?" another board member sputtered. "It's disruptive. It clashes with the harmonious flow of the summer landscape."
I, ever the helpful neighbor, decided to offer my assistance. "Disruptive aesthetics?" I echoed, a mischievous glint in my eye. "But, Karen, you were the one who insisted on a uniformly green lawn. No exceptions. Snow is white. White is uniform. I'm simply providing a consistent aesthetic experience year-round." Karen's eye twitched. "That's not what we meant," she retorted. This is artificial lawn modification." "Artificial?" I chuckled. "But Karen, snow is just frozen water. It's perfectly natural, just like rain or your tears of frustration." The HOA board members exchanged bewildered glances. They were trapped in their own logic, their arguments crumbling like a poorly built snowman. They had no legal basis to challenge my snow, no rule to enforce, no justification for their outrage. They were powerless, defeated by their own obsession with control and my unwavering commitment to pettiness. Meanwhile, the neighborhood had embraced my winter wonderland with open arms. Children, deprived of the joys of snow due to our perpetually sunny climate, flocked to my yard, their laughter echoing through the streets as they built snowmen, had snowball fights, and generally reveled in the unexpected winter magic.
"This is the best day ever,"
I overheard one child exclaim, his cheeks flushed with excitement.
"It's like Christmas in July."
Even the adults couldn't resist the charm of the artificial snow. They gathered on my lawn, sipping hot cocoa, because why not, and marveling at the absurdity of it all. The HOA's attempts to spoil the fun only solidified their image as the neighborhood villains, the Grinch-like figures trying to steal the community's joy.
"Those HOA folks are crazy,"
one neighbor exclaimed, shaking his head. "Trying to ban snow? What's next? Sunshine?" The HOA's outrage had backfired spectacularly. They had inadvertently created a community gathering space, a source of joy and laughter, and a symbol of defiance against their petty tyranny. And the snow, that beautiful, fluffy, artificial snow, was just the beginning. The HOA's outrage, ironically, became my greatest marketing tool. News of my snow-covered lawn, a defiant middle finger to their petty tyranny, spread like wildfire through the community and beyond. It wasn't long before the first wave of influencers arrived, their phones held high, ready to capture the spectacle for their eager followers. "This is amazing," I overheard one influencer exclaim, her voice echoing across my snow-covered lawn as she posed for a selfie with a snowman. "It's like a winter wonderland in the middle of summer. #snowpocalypse, #Hoefel, #petty revenge goals." The hashtags did their magic. My yard became a social media sensation, a viral symbol of defiance against HOA overreach. Influencers flocked to my lawn, their brightly colored outfits clashing spectacularly with the pristine white snow. They filmed videos, took photos, and interviewed me about my bold stance against the HOA. My story, the story of the man who dared to defy the lawn police, was shared and reshared, liked and commented on, until it reached a level of internet fame I never could have imagined. The HOA, of course, was mortified. Their attempts to control the narrative backfired spectacularly. Every news article, every social media post, every influencer's video painted them as the villains, the humorless bureaucrats trying to crush the community's joy. Their carefully crafted image of authority crumbled under the weight of public ridicule and a mountain of artificial snow. And then the snowball effect, pun intended, took hold. Inspired by my defiance, other neighbors joined the rebellion. Snow machines, once a rarity in our perpetually sunny suburb, became the must-have item of the season. Lawns across the neighborhood transformed into winter wonderlands, a collective middle finger to the HOA's tyranny. "If Ben can do it, so can we," Mr. Johnson, my perpetually grumpy neighbor, declared as he unveiled his own snow machine, a slightly smaller but equally impressive model. "Those HOA busybodies can't tell us what to do with our own yards." Mrs. Higgins, never one to be outdone, went all out, creating a winter-themed wonderland complete with ice sculptures, a miniature skating rink, and a life-sized Santa Claus made entirely of snow. "It's called seasonal decor, Karen," she announced triumphantly as Karen drove by, her face a mask of barely contained fury. The neighborhood was transformed. Streets once lined with perfectly manicured lawns now resembled a scene from a Christmas movie, a surreal and hilarious juxtaposition of palm trees and snowdrifts. The HOA's attempts to enforce uniformity had backfired spectacularly, creating a community united in its defiance, a winter wonderland born from the ashes of their petty tyranny. And the snow, that beautiful, fluffy, artificial snow, was just the beginning. The HOA, facing a full-blown PR crisis and a neighborhood that resembled the North Pole in July, called an emergency meeting. It was a desperate attempt to regain control, to reassert their authority over a community that was quickly slipping from their grasp. But their carefully laid plans backfired spectacularly, thanks to a little bit of mischief and a well-timed phone call. I received the meeting notice, a flimsy piece of paper demanding my presence to discuss my unacceptable lawn decorations. A mischievous grin spread across my face. This wasn't just a meeting. It was an opportunity. I contacted the local news stations, the newspapers, even a few online bloggers, inviting them to witness the HOA's desperate attempt to crush the spirit of Christmas. Or, summer, whatever. The meeting room was packed. HOA board members, their faces pale and drawn, sat at the head of the table, facing a sea of cameras and reporters. Karen, her usual air of authority replaced by a palpable sense of panic, nervously adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Ben," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "we've called this meeting to discuss your excessive snow." "Excessive?" I echoed, feigning confusion. "But Karen, you were the one who insisted on a uniformly white lawn. I'm simply providing a consistent aesthetic experience year-round." A ripple of laughter spread through the room. The reporters, sensing a good story, scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Karen's eye twitched. "This isn't what we meant," she sputtered. This is disruptive. It's... She searched for the right word. The word that would encapsulate the HOA's outrage and justify their desperate attempt to regain control. "It's un-American," she finally declared, her voice rising in indignation. "It's a blatant attack on the sanctity of summer. It's a war on Christmas." The room erupted. The reporters, their cameras flashing, couldn't believe their luck. "HOA declares war on Christmas," the headlines screamed. "Suburban tyrants try to ban snow." The HOA's attempt to control the narrative had backfired spectacularly, turning them into the Grinch-like villains of a real-life holiday movie. And then, the city got involved. The mayor, a jovial man with a penchant for publicity, saw an opportunity. "Year-round snow in our sunny city? he declared in a press conference. It's brilliant. It's unique. It's a potential tourist attraction. He announced plans for a Winter Wonderland Festival, a citywide celebration of my snow-covered lawn and the community's defiance against the HOA's tyranny. The HOA's authority was further undermined, their power waning in the face of public opinion and the city's enthusiastic embrace of the absurd. The HOA board members, defeated and demoralized, could only watch as their carefully constructed world of rules and regulations crumbled around them. They had become a laughingstock, a symbol of bureaucratic overreach and petty tyranny. And the snow, that beautiful, fluffy, artificial snow, had become a symbol of freedom, a testament to the power of community and the enduring spirit of Christmas, even in July. My snow-covered lawn, once a symbol of defiance, evolved into a beloved neighborhood attraction. The HOA's attempts to ban it had backfired spectacularly, transforming my yard into a haven for snow-deprived children and a quirky landmark that drew curious visitors from far and wide. I leaned into the absurdity, hosting snow day parties, complete with hot cocoa, snowball fights, and impromptu snowman building competitions. I even started charging a small admission fee, a cheeky nod to the HOA's obsession with fines, and a surprisingly lucrative venture. $5 for a snowball fight in July? One visitor chuckled as he handed me a crisp bill. Worth every penny. The HOA, meanwhile, could only watch in impotent fury as my snow-covered lawn became a symbol of their defeat. Their authority had been undermined, their rules rendered meaningless, and their carefully constructed image of suburban control shattered. The final blow came in the form of Karen's resignation. She stormed into the next HOA meeting, her face a mask of defeat and resentment. "I can't take it anymore," she shrieked, her voice cracking with emotion. "The snow, the laughter, the joy, it's unbearable." The remaining board members, a collection of weary and demoralized individuals, exchanged glances. Mr. Henderson, the perpetually flustered president, sighed. "Karen," he said, his voice laced with a hint of pity, "perhaps it's time to let it go." "Let it go?" Karen's eyes widened in disbelief. But, the rules, the aesthetics, the order." "The order is gone, Karen," Mrs. Higgins, a former HOA dissenter turned snow enthusiast, chimed in. "And good riddance. We're having fun. The kids are happy, and you're the only one who seems to have a problem with it." Karen's shoulders slumped. She looked around the room, her gaze meeting the amused eyes of her former subjects. She had lost. She had lost to a snow machine, a community's rebellious spirit, and a healthy dose of petty revenge. "Fine," she muttered, her voice barely a whisper. "I resign." And with that, she stormed out of the room, her reign of HOA tyranny finally over. The snow machine, once a symbol of defiance, had become a symbol of victory, a testament to the power of community and the enduring appeal of a good snowball fight, even in the middle of summer.